Welcome again to the Go For It podcast. This is episode 5. If you haven't heard our introduction, we live in a society dominated by social media. People have in their hearts and minds goals and dreams that they have, and this podcast is dedicated to pursuing your dreams and your goals despite others' opinions, self-doubt, and uncertainty and insecurity. So with that being said, I have a guest here today, Miss Leslie Harris, who started, she did something that I thought was pretty impressive, which was she started an Instagram live show during the middle of the pandemic. It was a Tuesday show. She got a whole bunch of like business owners, Black business owners on there. She was doing funny skit content, and I thought that was really cool because it's every time I spoke to Leslie about the show, she didn't seem concerned with either how people were perceived about it. It was just something that she was doing. She express the go for it mindset, and I really wanted to have her on the show, just talk to us about social skills, talk about what it means to start a show like that, and give us some tips about not being concerned with the results and just enjoying the process. So Leslie, just say hi to everybody.
Hello everybody.
All right, well, why'd you start the IG live show, Miss Harris?
So I think ultimately what you kind of touched on is that it was a go for it type of thing. As a natural extrovert, the quarantine, although, you want to flip the mindset, it doesn't suck to be at home. I'm safe at home, but it was killing me to not have any kind of interaction with people outside of the four walls in which I reside. And so I ultimately wanted to give myself a lifeline to still interact with my friends and family and do something funny, lighthearted, which is what it ultimately started as. And then it ended up evolving into a networking of advocating Black business, Black leadership, Black excellence, which is something that I'm super, super proud about, and the direction that the show ended up taking. But ultimately, it was just because I was bored at home. I needed something different in my routine outside of ordering different restaurants off DoorDash and Uber Eats. And that's why I decided just to go for it and do it.
All right. Well, so I think a big thing that people run into is they may have this idea, but then they kind of wallow in the idea of like people putting comments on the video where they say, "Oh, Leslie, this is trash." Like, how did you? It seems like you weren't even concerned with that. Like, what did you even run into that at all, or did you even consider that as a problem?
I didn't, because whenever I have an idea, I bounce it off of my close circle. And if I got their support and they're all in, outside opinions really don't matter at the end of the day. And even if they weren't all in, if I felt that strongly about it, I was going to do it anyway. It may not have lasted as long as it did, or is continuing going on, but I still would have went for it just to say that was something that I accomplished. The good thing about IG Live is that as you're hosting and you're interacting with people, you can't even keep up with all the comments that are going through. And I think I developed a good audience base where everybody was pretty much open-minded to what was happening. Everybody was there for a good time. Nobody was taking anything too seriously where there had to be any kind of issues within the comment section. And then as the show progressed, the live viewers weren't as high as it was when we first started, but when I would post it on IGTV after the fact, I would get so many other views. And so like some of the videos have peaked and had like over 250 views after the fact. And with that, the comments aren't in real time. And so they can comment, but still no negative comments. But I don't think are operating in an atmosphere where I'm to that point where people are, adding negative comments. It's more so like good content, lighthearted content. I don't have the numbers that you typically see negative comments with. So I'm happy to be in the small box that I'm in.
Right. So you mentioned something that I think is a very common saying that people say. You said, outside people's opinion don't matter. I think a lot of people say that, but people's actions kind of belie that actually does matter to people. And it seems like your actions are lining up with that statement. Why do you think people run into issues with regards to outside people's opinions?
It's definitely something that you grow into. I'm not a spring chicken, so I'm a little bit older. And so, 20-year-old Leslie probably would have been very insecure and like, I'm not going on social media. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that. But as you get older, you really understand that the people whose opinions matter, and those who don't. And that's just how you kind of operate. And that's how I've operated. I'm a Leo. I've always liked to be center of attention. I always like to perform. So negative comments kind of come with the territory. Again, also, I think in the world that we navigate in, and if 2020 has taught anybody anything, it's you cannot wait for other folks to chime in on what your dreams are. You will sit and you'll waste away. There's a lot of people who decided to actually go for something in 2020 because they were able to reflect on, damn, like the world could be ending. I could get sick. I could die. Why have I been dragging my feet for so long? And it's eye-opening that they're doing that, but it's also a travesty in the same mindset that they waited for a pandemic to actually live up to their full potential or to go try something that they were so hesitant on because they were worried about outsiders' opinions. And at the end of the day, it just really doesn't matter. Wow. Like, everybody's not religious, but at the end of the day, I am. So I'll say, like, I got to see God for myself for whatever. I got to answer for whatever I do on this earth. And I got parents. I have a family that I'm about, starting. Like, if those people are not negatively affected by what I'm doing, to hell with everybody else, honestly.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that's an awesome perspective. So I want to ask you specifically about concerns that I've run into when I talk to people either about starting a podcast or starting a YouTube channel. A lot of people have a lot of insecurity about being on camera. I know as I'm talking to you, and you and I kind of don't have that, but I don't fully understand it. Like, I don't know if you know a lot more people than me, but for those that kind of have issues with like being in front of an audience, like what kind of tips would you have for that person?
So practice makes perfect, and that translates to all aspects of life. If you are not good at something, you have to, again, either force yourself to do it on a regular basis. But again, growth does not happen in your comfort zone. And you'll see that all the way. Doing the same thing is insanity. So you can't expect to perfect a skill or to gain confidence by shying away from what you're intimidated by. So when I was in college, we had to do a engineering. Well, you were engineering, so you got to do a senior project, and it's in a group. And we were partnered with the guy who stuttered horrible. I mean, couldn't even say his first name. And I just coached him, and I said, "Hey, we're going to give you these parts, and it's not going to change. You need to go home, look yourself in the mirror, and practice it. It's just like an Easter speech. You go in there, Jesus wept. Like, you gonna say the same thing over and over again, and just keep doing it. And that's how you're gonna get out of it." And he still stumbled through it, but you have to be consistent with what you're doing. It's the same thing with math. I tell people all the time when I tutor, I'll take your parents' money. But if you don't do math every single day and get a foundation, when somebody throws an X in there because you can't add fractions, it's going to throw you off. If somebody adds a Y in there because you can't divide, complex numbers, it doesn't matter if they put X, Y, Z in there if you know the foundation. So that's just what I kind of piggyback on is perfection. Even now, I don't think that I reached a peak of where I am with social skills. I'm entertaining the idea of possibly joining a Toastmasters club in my local, city. And why? Because you're never to a point where you're done learning. So they're going to teach me, how to perfect whatever skills that I have naturally. And I'm going to be a force to be reckoned with. Let me figure out how to talk and be able to pace myself, because I get passionate. I get to talking, I talk with my hands. Let me get this under control. I'm going to be a problem for real. So, but again, you have to identify and know what your strengths, what your weaknesses are, and you have to focus on them. And that's the only way that you get better.
Awesome. So you mentioned social skills and how you're always learning. So over the course of maybe the past 10, 15 years, what would you say are some just social skill advice? If somebody were to come to you, like say like the stuttering guy were to come to you and he wanted to learn how to make more friends, because a guy like that is probably struggling or has a very small social circle. Like, what advice would you have for that guy?
Well, I wrote pickup lines for him in college, and I made him practice them at home, because I was like, how you gonna talk to somebody out their underwear or their panties and you can't say your name? Like, you trying to get her in the mood and you can't even, do nothing. And you like, again, you have to practice. So I wrote little pickup lines like, hey, what you doing? Or hey, pretty. Like, he literally couldn't even introduce himself. So I said, start small, practice. And with a little liquor in his system, he actually spoke very well, didn't stutter at all. He also could rap and sing songs without stuttering. So it's a mind thing. You get caught up because you lack confidence, you lack the inability to see yourself or how other people see you. Like, he wasn't even a bad looking guy. He was a very attractive guy. He was smart, but he stuttered.
Wow.
I partially blame his parents because he stuttered his whole life and they never put him in any speech therapy. They set him up for failure. But that's a whole nother story. But you got to start small. So he started with one set of pickup lines. And then I had a friend actually from back at home who was actually in school, and I kind of like tried to hook them up. So he actually used her, and I say use, but he liked her. She liked him, I guess. And so he was able to use her for practice. And I mean, it's crazy because like even years later, I went to Vegas. He actually is from Nevada. And so when I went out to Vegas, he kind of met up with us. Still stutter, not as bad. But I mean, he's an engineer. He's doing well. I mean, he's kicking butt in his career. But until you own that and you're confident, it's still whatever your insecurity is always going to hold you back until you own it. And I think he's owning it more. I mean, his speech seemed to be a little bit fluent, but he still stutters. But it's nothing compared to what it was in college.
So you touched on the lack of confidence thing. I think, especially knowing you and knowing myself, I don't think I have any strong or major self-confidence issues. And I knowing how this world has as I interface with people, I see like insecurity really blocks a lot of people. And I know that you're a very highly self-confident person too. Why do you think that, like, let's just go to the beginning. I think that's the foundational problem for why people aren't pursuing their goals and pursuing their dreams. Like, I don't know, like, what's your perspective on that?
Again, it's all about exposure. It's all about who feeds into you. I mean, as a young person, what you see around you ultimately will shape how you view yourself growing up, in my opinion. So again, I come from a 2-parent household, thankfully. My parents fed into me and they poured into me and gave me whatever the middle class world was. And I took it for what it was. My parents can do no wrong in my eyes. Like, at the end of the day, I always boast and say, hey, I could be single for the rest of my life. I got my daddy. And people take that for granted. So you see a lot of different things. And again, how women will allow men in their relationships depends on how they view men or have an active man in their life, vice versa from how a man will treat a woman, maybe some of the things that he's seen his mother allow and so forth, or his relationship with his mother. So again, I believe it definitely starts at home. Everybody doesn't have the same upbringing. So again, it also is, once you get to a certain point where you can't rely on excuses like, oh, I have a broken home, I had this. Well, you're at an age where you can go get counseling. You're at an age where we have everything at our fingertips from YouTube. So like, the new world made it really hard for people to have excuses, because anything that you want and need is literally at your fingertips. If you ask for it or you're vocal about what you need, you can probably attach yourself with someone or something that will help you progress. And I think that in the same token, it's also made a lot of people lazy, is that they don't put forth effort because they have that much access to it. So they'll wait to the last minute to do something, or they'll rush something. But again, for me, it comes from a foundation at home, what I've seen, what was poured into me, and it allows me to kind of be free to an extent to do and explore whatever I can, because no one ever gave me, I had limitations, of course, but not in that aspect that would stop me from being just a successful person ultimately.
Okay, yeah, so you mentioned being like the life of the party. You're a Leo, you like being the life of the party. So say like someone like myself who grew up very shy, very reserved, and I kind of learned, like, I've kind of always attached myself to extroverts, and over time I've been able to take on their attributes. And so I come across as much more extroverted than I actually am. A lot of people are like, they don't understand that I'm more of an introvert who passes as an extrovert in a lot of ways. I forgot where I was going with that. What did I say originally?
You said that I'm the life of the party. And
yeah. So, like, what would you say is the secret sauce to being the life of the party?
Well, God threw away the recipe when he made me, so I can't.
Oh, goodness.
There ain't no duplicate. No, I'm just kidding. Again, like I said, I think what people misunderstand about extroverts is that everything just comes easy to them. They're social butterflies. They do this. Again, like I said, I think the difference between introverts and extroverts is that we'll not necessarily suck it up, but we'll just go for it because something in us just pushes us. In every speech that I've ever done, I've been nervous. Everything that I've ever done on my show, I mean, if I wasn't real, I mean, I pre-planned everything. I had a notebook that was in front of me when I was doing my show of just kind of thoughts or pieces if, you know, the dialogues, because again, you can't control a guest, just like, you know, with interviewing people. If the person isn't bubbly or doesn't have a lot to talk on, you have to feed them things to make them be, you know, more vocal and talkative on your show. So I used to make points on what I want to talk about or whatever the topic was. I pre-planned my shows months out. So again, there's planning that goes into being life of the party and doing things in nature that people aren't privy to or can't see behind the scenes. So don't get it twisted that I'm not, you know, overthinking all the time, because that comes with being an extrovert. That's not that I'm not nervous, but I'll just say it's either gonna go well or it ain't. And only I'm gonna find out if I do it. So here I go. And I jump in. So I think that's the misconception that people have about extroverts. And some may don't. Some may not get nervous. I do. So I'm not going to say that I'm not nervous or sometimes, or I don't overthink or second guess myself. It's just that I just end up just doing it anyway.
Right. All right. So I'm gonna ask you a tough question, because if you had time to plan for this, you probably would answer this, but you're actually pretty funny. So what do you think is the source of being funny? Like, that's a big part of charisma, making people feel good. I think there's, like, it's very common where people say, often people don't remember what you said, but it's like how you made them feel. Like, so what would you say is the foundation of being funny?
My funny or just in general?
Both. Yeah, let's go with both.
So my parents are comedians, and not legit comedians, but my dad will have you crying. My mom, they feed off each other. We were the house to go to, and just growing up, everybody wanted to be around them. My dad has a very twisted sense of humor, so sometimes it's probably offensive, and he doesn't have, like, I say, hey, that's too far, and he laughs, and like inappropriate, like Comedy Central, probably after dark, like nothing that should probably be said. But we grew up around that, so partially the reason why I don't have a filter is because of that too, is that we say whatever comes to my mind, and then we'll maybe apologize later if we feel like, again, you can't control how you make people feel. We'll apologize and own up to it. But they're the first comedians that I interacted with. My family is just funny, and we grew up with, like, necessarily it's old, but play the dozens. Like, we would talk about each other, like somebody gonna rank on you. I got picked on in school, so I gotta come back. Like, I'm not gonna go home and cry. Like, I wasn't a fighter, so I had to hit you with my words. So I think, again, it's exposure, what you kind of allow yourself to be around and absorb. Most of the stories, we watch a lot of YouTube documentaries. A lot of comedians started as, it's an outlet. Either they was getting bullied and they made everybody laugh so people would like them, or, you know, they were poor or something like that. So they would come up with different things to, you know, take themselves away from their current situation. So again, being funny comes from, I think, again, life experiences, what you can make in turn, which could be a bad situation, to a good situation by a different viewpoint and perspective on something. So I think that's where being funny comes from.
Right. Okay. Cool. Got nothing else right now. I mean, we can just talk about, go ahead.
So I was going to say, I mean, this is your podcast, so, I mean, go for it. I think I know, and you probably talked about it on your show, but I can't recall at the moment. I know the reason why you started it, but episode 5, what have you learned about yourself with doing the podcast? How has it grown over the couple episodes, and where do you see it going?
Yeah, so for the podcast, I guess for me, what I've learned, the biggest thing I've learned is to not be a perfectionist. For example, this is us redoing podcast number 2. It's because halfway through the podcast, I had headphones in and I unplugged it, then I lost the audio. This podcast still needs a professional intro music, outro music. And so
you got your lighting together though.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You told me that my lighting sucked on my first on my first podcast. I fixed that. So it's been like an exercise in gradual improvement. So I think the thing I learned from this podcast is you don't have to, it doesn't have to be perfect. Like, and I think that's what's cool about social skills too. Like, you're not going to be perfect. Like the guy, you gave him pickup lines. Like, okay, you might need that initially, but the best way to go about it is to use like things that are happening in the environment. Like, oh man, I'm glad that there's a dog running by. I'm glad that dog didn't bite me. And like, that's not funny, but it's a conversation opener. And then the girl might be like, oh man, yeah, those little dogs, like they're the worst. You know, like, I don't know. But that's how conversations happen. I think, I think
very organic.
Yeah, for sure. That's it for me, Leslie.
Well, short and sweet. I mean, you can't force nothing. Once it's there, it's there. I think it's gold. I mean, I gave you my all in whatever 20 minutes we had. And so,
for sure. I mean, just generally, do you think that just from your life experience, you mentioned life experiences, do you think that there's something that generally is missing that people need to know about, whether it be being liked by people or social skills? Like, is there something that you're like, that just gets on your nerves that people don't do that you think they should do?
I'm trying to think. I think that we tend to shut ourselves off from a lot of things by bringing preconceived notions to the table. Life experiences are great, but they also can hinder us from progression. As you can see, where America is today and how we are so divided. I mean, that comes from life experiences, life exposure as well, and people using that almost as a crutch. We don't want to change and be better because it's scary.
Right.
It's red or blue. There's so many other colors out there, and I pray that eventually we get to a real democracy where we can have multiple parties where it's competitive. I mean, you can't put all your eggs in one basket, and that's where we have been, and you see where it's gotten us. And I just feel like that's one portion of it. I also feel like we also get to a point where we become out of touch to an extent. Are you taking a shot? What are you doing?
I'm drinking a shot. So I like to drink Jack Daniels on the podcast, and I just got the shot glass. It's the Black Alumni Reunion for.
You don't sip shots. That's
it's
you might well put your pinky in the air if you going. That's very bougie.
Okay.
But pinky up. But at the end of the day, I think we also get to a point where we I forget where I was going with that. What was I going to say? Something about just exposure to other folks. I think when we get to a certain level where we think that we've so-called made it, a lot of people forget and neglect to look back and bring somebody else with them.
Right.
Because you never know what impact you can have. And I say that because in the world we are into today, 2020 is still making things aware that we shouldn't have. So like you hear conversations about affirmative action, all this kind of stuff, until we have to stop saying the first woman this, the first Black, the first Hispanic, that we still haven't really made the strides and broken down the doors that we need to. And so I feel like those people who have broken down the doors, some of them tend to forget to give back. I use my city, for example. There's so many dope people that come from Sarasota, Bradenton, but all they attach themselves to are the athletes, which typically don't come back. They are the main ones who do come back. So that's all that the kids see. But what happened to the engineer? Why don't they come back and do a workshop? Why doesn't the optometrist come back and do a workshop? Why does not, those people don't come back. So it makes it unachievable for those other kids because all they're attaching themselves to are the athletes. And I feel like I feel like it's my obligation to allow my qualified people a seat at the table to eat. You can't bring everybody with you, but those that you can, who are qualified, who are hungry enough, who want the opportunity, bring them along. LinkedIn, for example, today, I usually don't respond back to messages. I don't. Depending on who it is and what they're like. So a lot of they're selling stuff. Hey, I got this, consultant company. I can help you do this, do that. I work for Amazon. We do everything. Like, I don't really need your help from an outside person. But every now and then I'll get a career person who's looking up or thinking about transitioning out of consulting to corporate America, which is what I did. And I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, and I'll get on a call for them for 30 minutes, an hour, whatever the case may be. And I do that because I didn't have anybody do that for me. And so now that I'm in a position to do that, why would I not? Because these are little Leslie's. Like, again, the reason why I got my job fresh out of school is somebody took a chance on me at a career fair at UF. Right. They didn't have to. I didn't get any internships. Nobody was trying to hire me because you got to have experience to get an internship. Doesn't make any sense, but that's just how the world is. So again, I try to extend where I can. My team is currently hiring. So this young lady reached out to me and said, hey, I just want to pick your brain. I applied already. I don't need a recommendation. I just want to know what the job's about. We got talking about all kind of stuff. And she's super dope. Like, I loved her spirit. I said, hey, I would love to have you on my team. You know what? I'm going to go take it a step further. I know the hiring manager because you're going to be working on my team. I'm going to reach out to them. And she's like, got all teary-eyed and crying on the phone, like, oh my goodness, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And it's little stuff like that, what if I had ignored her? She may not have been happy with her job. You don't know what was going on, but what is 30 minutes out my day? Like, really, like, just what is 30 minutes out my day to help somebody else out? So it may work out. She may get an interview. She may not, but I did my part. She's actually a PE. I've been on the fence about taking my PE. So she was offering me forms of advice. Okay. Now I have a networking buddy that if I do decide to do so, she's already taken it and she's passed. She said she will help me out, give me some study material. Like, I don't know this lady from paint on the wall. You know what I'm saying? But again, she's a woman engineer and she's a minority woman, not necessarily Black. I don't really know what she is, but she's something. And you know what I'm saying? And I don't know, but I had to do that. And not that I felt obligated, but why not? Why not take the call? You know what I'm saying? You never know who you're going to interact with. You don't know who you're going to help. And again, in our world, which is a male-dominated field, white male-dominated field, there's not a lot of women that look like us. So when there is another person that looks like you at a seat at the table, it makes you feel a little bit more confident. It makes you feel a little bit more comfortable. And why not pick my brain? And I may be able to tell her, like, you don't want to work for Amazon. You don't want to do this. Or I could say, hey, it's the best decision I've ever made. And she makes her own decision, but she doesn't have the information to make that educated choice without somebody taking the time out to, help her out. So, right. I don't know. That was my good deed for today.
You mentioned LinkedIn, and I had an interesting LinkedIn interaction recently also, where there was this Indian guy from New York. He sent me a message, and I thought he was essentially building some code that would actually be able to write code automatically. Like, you kind of give it some settings and it'll automatically write like AI, which is pretty cool. But I figured he was just trying. The problem with LinkedIn as of right now, which is October 25th, 2020, LinkedIn's getting a lot of traction right now. So there's just a lot of robotic messages coming in on LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. And so it makes you really jaded when you get these requests on LinkedIn.
Absolutely.
So he was asking me questions about my business, and I figured I was talking to a robot. So I gave him a very brusque response. I said, dude, this is probably the second question you've asked me about my business. Like, let's get to it. What are you trying to sell? Let's get to it. And I thought that he was a robot, but I actually made a huge mistake there because he was legitimately interested in my business and how it was actually run. And I ended up getting on a video call with him, and he was just some guy really trying to hustle at making this AI software. And I literally felt like I needed to apologize to him. I was like, dude, I'm really sorry for being short with you. And I think that's the problem. That's one of the downsides of getting older. So one of the upsides of getting older is you kind of like see patterns and you like behavior. Like, okay, I know in 25 days, this person's probably going to do this. And you can predict with a high degree of accuracy, but that also puts people in a bucket where those that can surprise you, you
don't allow them to. Yeah.
So I kind of wanted to ask you about that. Like, how do you defend yourself against falling into those patterns? Like, I made that huge mistake with that guy where I was being very offensive, and he didn't deserve that because he was actually legitimately asking me questions about stuff that he thought was interesting about my business. And so yeah, like we're both in our 30s. Like, how do you avoid that just falling into robotic patterns of social dynamics?
I I'm probably the worst one because I be responding to everything, and I probably shouldn't. Like, so I'm probably not the good, and I get in trouble for that. Not necessarily in trouble, but
Yeah.
I'm always picking up friends around, and you talk. Travis will tell you the same thing. Like, and I don't, and I try to stop. He was like, "How do?" Oh, I did it again. This girl, she want to be my friend. I don't want to be her friend. I just was being genuine. Like, yeah, I reviewed your resume. Yeah, I talked to you, and hyped you up, but that wasn't because I wanted this to go any further than this. I just see somebody who's struggling and I'm gonna help out because I can. Like, with my network, I know a lot of people. So by me being nice and seeing you struggle, hey, I have this person that I can set you up with. That's not meaning that I want to build foundation for a friendship that's going to last for 20 years. It's just me being nice. So I have a hard time with that. So I respond back to all kind of posts. I was actually going back and forth with this African dude on LinkedIn about trying to get in with Amazon, and he was having issues and he was interviewing back and forth, and I kept trying to tell him, like, that's not my department. And it was to the point where I had to stop responding because, like, he just wasn't understanding. I think there was some kind of language barrier. And I just couldn't help him. It wasn't my department. So, I mean, I'll help to an extent, and then I'll just maybe stop responding if I feel like it's going down the wrong. I won't necessarily get rude. I'll never get rude, but I just stop responding. And if I think it's a robot or it's a message, like somebody sends me a connection and they have a blurb, like I'm selling something, I'm doing that, it's above my pay grade. Like, I can't make nothing move or shake in Amazon. Like, if you want a contract, you got to go to Seattle. Like, nothing you can sell me, I can actually help you out with. So I know they see Amazon and they think that, oh, this is their way in, but I can't make nothing happen. So those I kind of ignore. But if it's somebody saying, hey, I want to know what you do, I want to do whatever, like, I won't necessarily give everybody the phone call conversation, but I have like a little excerpt that I'll copy and paste and put in there. And they can make their judgment call from whatever I send. And if it goes any deeper or they have any more follow-up questions, then I'll answer them. But I mean, I respond pretty much to just about everything. Instagram posts, I delete. Like, if it's a random, like, little somebody trying to send me some naked pictures, and I'll exit, because that's what you get a lot of robots to that on Instagram. I don't want to see that. But if it's a post about other stuff, then, I'll respond. And that's to a fault, I'm sure. But I'll talk to anybody.
I think that's actually the path that I've chosen, is because of that experience. I was so ashamed of myself for, like, just going hard at that dude, and he didn't deserve that. I even though if I know it, like, in my mind, this is a robot, I respond like a human. And I think that's something that we have to consciously do in mind.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Human. Like, there are these robots out there, and people do have automated scripts, but there might be somebody who just seems like an automated script, and they're really not. And I don't want to just discount those people.
That is true. And I mean, and LinkedIn offers up responses anyway.
Yep.
So you can open it and just click the button. Like, sometimes I just open it. It don't even make sense. You're welcome. Like, they didn't even say thank you. I just send the automated responses, but I do respond to my messages. Yeah. So, but whatever because LinkedIn already vetted the message. So I just tap whatever. If I know that it's not real, or I perceive it to not be real, I just click whatever the automated reply is, and it goes about my business. And I go about my business. So,
right. You actually said something that I really want to ask you about, because you mentioned I have a strong network. I know a lot of people, and you're actually the person I'd say the most in my life who has a very strong network of people that feel like they know you very well. And, like, so you touched that about your discussions with your fiance, where people were just like, oh man, like they think you're your friend, and you're like, well, we're really not friends. I'll just be cool.
Facts.
Like how do you keep up with them? I think that's I would say that's probably, if I were to just throw my own perceptions of you onto you, like, and to just make that clear, I think that's your, like, gift. I think you have a gift of keeping up with people a lot more than other people. Like, how do you do that? How do you maintain all these relationships? So
we have a saying at work where we identify what our superpower is. And I think that's my superpower. So when we do, annual reviews and stuff like that, you have to identify what your superpowers are, and you have to extend a survey to, your coworkers, and they have to identify what your superpower is as well. So, like, your opportunities and your superpowers. Okay. That is a superpower of mine. and it comes at a fault. It's superpower and it's also kryptonite at the same time. So I didn't really notice it was a superpower probably until I first started working at Amazon. I've always been a strong proponent of letting people know that they feel important. So we would hire, I mean, I was in operation at the time, so I worked on the floor. So we're talking peak season, hundreds of people that reported to me. I knew all their names, probably about the first week they started. And everybody was just like, how do you know their names? How do you remember? And I said, I made it my business to remember their names. And so they would go through a 2-day orientation. By the end of the second day, I knew everybody in that group because we were on board groups like of 15 or 20. And they would go back around and they would say, Miss Leslie, you know my name? Just like, you know, it was like, how do you know everybody's name? Sometimes people, all they have is their name. And if you can't take the time out to remember their name and make them feel empowered, I mean, what are you doing? You hear all these complaints about people who work at Amazon and whatever. My people weren't through a wall for me. And that was because I met them halfway. Nothing that they did was beneath me. I would get in the station, pack with them too, do whatever. And I knew their name. I knew about their kids. I knew about their family. If they were sick, I could tell they was lying. They calling in. Oh, you want nothing wrong with you. And you know, you have to be consistent. And I think that translates and with my network at the same time, because again, it's a blessing that my network is actually my friends. A lot of people have a network they don't consider actually their friends. It's just people that they use for whatever business venture. And it's a mutual relationship where give and take. And so you don't really keep up with them. But my network is people that I actually care about, that I actually know. And they just happen to be really dope people too, where they are engineers, or they're doctors, or they're realtors, or whatever the case may be. And so again, blessed to just have that network of friends or people that I associate with that I consider to be friends, and they just actually are well connected in different career paths other than myself. So it just makes it come off as a very powerful network. But that's my family, and I keep up with them because I want to, because I want to know what's going on. And it's mutual. They'll keep up with me. So I may not talk to them every day, but I have group me. I mean, how hard is group me to get a group of like 5 of your friends and y'all just send messages? So all my friends have kids. So first day of school, I'm getting all these pictures. I'm talking to them. Instagram, I have interacted with them as well, even if it's a double tap or whatever. But I have multiple group me's. I have multiple like just groups, text message groups of people that I interact with on a regular basis, some more often than others. But there's tier systems within my network, but everybody gets a round of some kind of touching, or at least I'm talking to you on your birthday, or I'm sending you something, and I'm making it my point if I feel like you're of value to my life, and I make it known, and you will know where you stand because I reach out, I make sure I check up on you, I give you tough love, and I tell you about your lighting, and we go from there.
You say, oh yeah. So that was very unexpected. Mm-hmm. Yes. For anybody who doesn't know, Leslie told me on my first podcast how bad my lighting was in my apartment. And
But what he didn't say, listen, so I was going to text him, and this is how growth and maturity is. I was going to rip him one. Like, I was like, this is super dope. I love the podcast. And I was typing and it just came off very angry. And I said, you know what? I'm going to FaceTime him. This is not a text message conversation. I need to tell him to his face about this lighting. And I started off like, oh, Josh is super dope, but you got to fix that lighting. Like, right. You here, but this podcast is here. So I need you to fill the gap in. And he done got a ring light. Now he moved up. Now he got the whole apartment lit.
Right. I've come to the world. Thank you.
I'm trying.
For sure. Yeah, I think that was a beautiful thing. I think I would say that is clearly your superpower. That might even be the name of this podcast, like how to maintain a large social network. I don't know. But yeah, I think what I'm hearing.
The question could be, what's your superpower?
Okay, yeah, I like that. I like that better. I like that. Actually.
You're welcome.
Big and more like mysterious.
Yeah, so they got to click it to be like superpower. Yeah. And that's how all the topics get you. There would be a tagline that you're waiting for, and in the podcast, like an hour long, and they don't talk about the headline until like 58 minutes. You're like, damn, I listened to the whole podcast already.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I don't have any other questions for you, Leslie, unless you got anything with regards to going for it, insecurity, social skills. If you got anything else to say, we'd love to hear it. Yeah, I'm speaking on behalf of the international community of people.
Yeah, all your viewers. I don't really have anything. I would just say, again, go for it. Life is really short, and 2020 again has shown us that. you would deserve it, or you owe it to yourself to go for it. The great Tallahassee hero T-Pain posted something and said, try something. Like, if during this time period, try something that you've always wanted to try, whether you were good at it or not. Don't have to advertise about it, but just try it. Right. You may fail, you may end up liking it, but you owe it to yourself to at least, exhaust that means of doing something or going to go try it out, because why not? Like, if you've always wanted to do puzzles, or you always want to learn how to ride a motorcycle, like, what else you doing? Like, go read up on it, go figure it out. You want to learn how to dabble in the stock market, go do it, go learn, go do books, go connect yourself with people. So, like, again, I think we sell ourselves short. And again, for those who just choose to take a break from real life because real life is just crazy and you decided not to do anything in 2020, kudos to you too. Nobody's judging you for that. And I think some folks deserve that break and they need that break because regular life can be taxing. But for those who always wanted more, and you weren't seeing that in regular life, like, take advantage of it now. You never know what could happen, what you may stumble across, who you may meet, what elbows you may rub, and where you may be. In one of the shows, the funniest episode, I think, is I found this lady, and I don't know if you were on that episode or you saw it, but it was an African lady, which I didn't know she was African at the time, but she tweeted something about, it was a tweet about your worst breakup. And she tweeted about how they were out eating lunch in the market one day and he just took off running in one direction at full speed and she never saw him again. And they had been dating for like 6 months or something like that.
That to me.
And I thought that was hilarious.
That is hilarious.
And I said, that's Hell Date. Like, that was the basis of the beginning of the show. And I said, I have to have her on the show. So I found her Twitter, like her Twitter name was on the meme. I found her on Twitter and I requested her to be on the show. She agreed. Come to find out, she was in like Zambia or something. So it was like a hell of a long time difference. So she had to stay up to like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, her time, to be on the show at 7:30. But she showed up. We had a little issues because like internet wasn't that great. It wasn't stretching that far. But she was able to come on and she told her story. And that was her, like, now I follow her on Twitter. I follow her on Instagram. And we double tap on her pictures. That's like my friend. Like,
right.
Who would have thought that she would have responded back? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's some crazy stuff that, go for it. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I had some random sex ladies on the show that I randomly found on Instagram, and Miss Taylor, she's still my buddy. I still be talking to her when she be posting little naked pictures on Instagram. And, like, so again, like, I've had some weird, like, I won't even call them weird, like, some really dope people on the show that may not be everybody's cup of tea, but you were able to get exposed to that from my show by me taking a risk and going for it. I mean, I didn't have a set genre of what I was looking for within the show. I mean, it was no hold bars for the most part, but why not? And that's the thing, that it should be like, whenever you think about something and you're hesitant about it, I mean, of course, weigh the pros and cons. And then if it's 50-50, ask yourself, why not?
Right.
And go for it. What's the worst that can happen? You fail, lose some money. That happens every day. Or you could succeed and it could be a really dope experience and you got stories to tell. I'd pick the latter.
Where can people find you online, Leslie?
No, I'm saying I get my information. I'm just kidding. So you guys can find me on LinkedIn, Leslie Harris. You can also find me on Twitter. What is my Twitter name? I don't know. Is it my same? I don't know if it's my Instagram name. My Instagram name is Less is More, LESIZMORE 88. Less is More. Oh, is it 88? I don't even know my names because I don't give them out.
Okay.
You're gonna have to. I don't know. I think it's just less. I think it's just Less is More. I don't think it's 88. I don't know. Anyway, Josh is going to put them in the video because clearly I suck at this, but I feel like it's just Less is More. I don't think there's
88. That's your Instagram.
Is Less is More 88?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so it is 88. So I wasn't tripping. So yeah, it's Less is More 88 on Instagram, and I think on Twitter it's less the best 88. If it's not the same thing as Instagram.